Gentlemen, welcome back to the forum. We will now proceed to the plenary on domain name. In this session, we're going to focus on the outlook of domain name market, and topics to be discussed include industry trends, updates, and the next steps for the new gTLD applications and IDNs. The moderator for the session is Mr. Thomas Kuiper. He is the director at Taiwan Trademark Association. He is also the founder and general manager of Gandhi's Asia Business Unit in Taipei. Since its launch in Asia, Gandhi added Chinese and Japanese support to its website and has supported the developer community in the region. I will now hand the floor to our moderator, Mr. Thomas Kuiper. Mr. Kuiper, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. I just came from Singapore from the International Trademark Association annual meeting. There were over 7,000 people who mainly work on brand protection and on building their brand. And to my surprise, many of these people, they don't know much about domain names or anything about domain names. And so if you want, this session is about the outlook of domain name, and I'm happy to be joined by David Liu from the Chinese, who's also a very old registrar with a very long time experience in domain names, as old as the company Gandhi, like 20 years. Valerie from ICANN and Edmon from DotAsia. We also have Crystal online from GoDaddy Registry, which I believe used to be working already with .mobi. So there used to be already new gTLDs, which is generic top-level domain names besides .com, many years ago, which was .mobi, .biz, and later .info with affiliates. But these are all successful, and people never considered those as new top-level domain names, but at the time they were. And so the other new top-level domain names on new gTLD program launched in 2013, 2014, so it's already 11 years ago. And it seems like the industry had no rush at all to go for the next round. But luckily now, after the COVID pandemic is over, there has been more movement, there has been more process to speed up the process to have brand TLDs again. And of course, other generic top-level domain names, new ones. So I'm very happy to start with Valerie then for the presentation. And she will give you her outlook and information about the next round of gTLDs.
大家早上好. Thank you for having me. My name is Valerie from ICANN Organizations. 很高兴回到台北. So today I'll give a brief update on the next round of new generic top-level domains gTLD program. So the new generic top-level domain program is a community-driven initiative that allows the domain name system to expand by introducing new generic top-level domains. So as many of you may know, in 2012, the new gTLD program kicked off the largest expansion of the top-level domains. It increases choice and opportunities for the communities, cities and regions, businesses and brands. For example, here in Taipei, I'm very happy to see that .taipei from the 2012 rounds has many domains in use. So the expansion was to support innovations, new spaces and flexibility, allow people to use the domain name system in their own languages. So a key focus for the next round is the next billion of internet users whose languages and script may not be using Latin characters. So ICANN is committed to expand the use of internationalized domain names, and all domain names, regardless of their length and character set, can be equally worked in all internet-enabled applications. The next and future round of gTLD will increase new opportunities to serve the diverse language and scripts of the world. Now back to the update for the next round of gTLD applications. The Generic Name Supporting Organization, GNSO Council, approved policy recommendations for the new gTLD program subsequent rounds and forwarded them to the ICANN Board of Directors for considerations. During the March ICANN meetings, we reached a very important milestone where the ICANN board adopted most of the recommendations. So that signaled the start of the policy implementation process. There are, however, some pending recommendations that are complex in nature and still require further discussion with the GNSO Council. So since the board resolution in March, what have we done? So I can call for volunteers to join the implementation review team. The first meeting just took place last week and second yesterday. So more than 60 members have signed up, and I believe we have colleagues here also joined the implementation review team. So the team will meet regularly to assist ICANN organization in drafting the applicant guidebook. So at the same time, ICANN organization is working on the infrastructure development, the business processes and services requirements for the next round. We are on track to deliver a comprehensive implementation plan for opening the next round by 1st August. So the plan will include the estimated date for that ICANN will be able to open the applications. ICANN organization will continue to publish reports on the implementation progress and status until the application opens. So there will be more to learn about the program development at the upcoming June ICANN meeting. So we intend to make the information available to the community as we work together to enable the future gTLD rounds. To help us promote the new gTLDs more effectively in this region, I will be glad to know who are interested to apply. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Valerie. Yeah, I think we are all looking forward to see actually that there will be more applicants and more people actually who want to use or to have their own gTLD, generic top-level domain name. In my case, I look forward especially for brands. Taiwan used to have applications for .htc and .asa, but HTC, many people might not remember the company now. Okay, HTC used to be the company who's now the Google Pixel phone, so Google bought them. ASA has retired their TLD. There's also .government as an IDN, which is run by TWNIC. And so there's still, except .taipei, there's actually no real successful case in Taiwan for a new gTLD right now. But we all hope that the next round, that the brands are more aware that they can really secure their own space with having their own gTLD. And in this regard, there's also been a lot of consolidation in the domain name market, especially with registries, affiliates, with donuts, and then they renamed themselves to a new beautiful name, Identity Digital, which everybody likes. And so we also have Peterson here from GoDaddy Registry, which is also one of the major two players next to donuts or Identity Digital for running the backend registry. And I'm not sure if she's available now on remote. Hi, Crystal, can you see me? I can see you.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, great. Good to see you.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, okay, I hope I made a good introduction about you. I hope it's correct. I said you already worked with .mobi before, and then public internet registries. So you're really a veteran about the domain name industry, right? So yeah, please go ahead with your presentation.
Yes, and thank you, Thomas, for that introduction. It was great, and yes, I got my start in .mobi many moons ago, and have been a super big fan of domain names since. But as Thomas had mentioned, my name is Crystal Peterson, and I am currently the Senior Director of Operations and Account Management for GoDaddy Registry. So just wanted to give a little bit about GoDaddy Registry. I know Thomas had made a great introduction, but we are part of the GoDaddy Inc. group of companies. We are a sister company to the registrar. We are not part of the registrar group. We're a leading registry services provider, and we currently have a little over 12 million domain names under management, and also do about 34 billion in DNS transactions daily. And we're the registry operator for approximately 40 gTLDs and ccTLDs around the world. And I like to think we're trusted by some of the world's biggest TLDs, governments, and brands. Simply stated, we launch, grow, and monetize top-level domains, and either directly or as an outsourced service provider on behalf of our clients. And we have clients that include ccTLDs, city, new gTLDs, legacy TLDs such as .biz, as Thomas had mentioned before, and certain registry operator clients from around the world. But enough about me. I want to talk about what we came here to talk about, which is domain names, which is one of my favorite subjects. Thomas had given us a little bit of a history lesson when he started the panel, and I wanted to take that a little bit further. So in order to be able to look at the outlook of domain names, I believe that we should first take a walk down memory lane. I want to look at a brief history of domain names and how they have evolved over the past 38 years to where we are today. What's interesting is that the greatest changes have only started happening about 10 years ago, even though there have been movements to facilitate this for a lot longer, especially with some of the legacy, what we now call legacy, but some of the very first rounds of new gTLDs back in the early 2000s. And of course, there is history before domain names, as we were hearing on the previous panels, and looking at the creation of networks, looking at the creation of IANA and the TCP and IP networks into the domain name system. But I want to fast forward and really kind of start through that period up at 1985. For many of us, the makeup and operations of domain names is in our blood. It's what we do day in and day out, and we make them work. But going back to an understanding of the history, I believe helps to understand what the future of domain names really can be about. If we look at March 1985, the first .com, symbolics.com, which is a computer manufacturer in Massachusetts, they registered that domain name and they registered it for free. Symbolics.com remained under the same ownership until 25 years later, and in 2009 it was purchased for an undisclosed sum by XF.com Investments. It does still exist today, and it's a kind of strange hybrid of like a museum and a part advertising space. And so please go check it out. It's very interesting, and there's some great factoids about the internet there. But also looking at the first .org domain name, it was registered in July 1985. That's miter.org, which is still the same organization it was in 1985. And the first .net, which was registered, which in January 1985, which was nordu.net. But looking at the history kind of through the years, we have 1985 when the first domain names are registered. 1985 through 1986, the first CCTLDs are approved and starting to be registered. Some of the first CCTLDs include .us, .uk, .il, and on into 1986. We have 1993. We've blossomed into 7,500 domain names in the world, and Network Solutions is now contracted to run domain operations from the National Sciences Foundation. And then in 1995, 10 years after the launch and the creation of the first domain names, we're at 120,000 domain names in the world. 97% of the registrations are commercial. And this year, domain names are no longer free. And then about 3 years later, 1998, we have over 2 million registrations worldwide. So from 1995 to 1998, a huge boom. And also we have the starting and the creation of ICANN. I'm going to fast forward a couple of years, start talking about some of the monetization and looking at what domain names are and are not. We have one of the most expensive registrations and purchases at that time to date, and it was vacationrentals.com. It's purchased for $35 million. And what's more interesting to me is that the buyer, Ben Sharples, purchased it because he wanted to keep it out of the hands of Expedia at the time. It's still one of the top 3 sales overall. And to me, this showcases that all domain names are not created equal, and that brandable, short, relevant names are worth more in the marketplace and are valuable. And we want to continue to help create those as well. Another fun fact, the GoDaddy blog reports that the most expensive domain name purchase out there to date is cars.com in 2014 for $872 million. What I find interesting is the fact that as all of the new gTLDs were getting up and running and launching, we also had the most expensive .com purchase ever. So showing that domain names are not going away. Back down to history lane, in 2013, the Who API did report that that every possible combination of 4-letter .com domain names had been registered. So from AAAA.com to ZZZZ.com, all 456,976, excuse me, it's a big number, combinations had been exhausted. So 3-letter .coms had been gone since 1997. I do want to note that it was not all 4-character .coms, it was just all 4-letter .coms, which were gone. So what does this all mean, and what have we been looking at, and why have I been spouting facts and figures just from history? I know in the earliest days of the internet, we only had 3 domain extension options for consumers to choose from. .com was designated as the domain ending to signify online commerce, of course. Back then, nobody could have dreamed that the internet would become the single most important invention for global communication and commerce in the history of mankind. From 1985 onward, as the world discovered the value of connecting online and really doing commerce online, com evolved into what we like to call that 800-pound gorilla, and became the global standard for online commerce. To me, this is probably one of the world's greatest first mover advantages of all time. All the great .com names were gobbled up pretty early in the big businesses, and the .com boom era, entrepreneurs and domain investors who understood the value of this and really made the place a digital real estate. And in response, as Valerie just shared with us from ICANN, to increase competition and to decrease the consumer reliance on only.com, ICANN expanded the TLD landscape several times over the years. In the early 2000s, and one of the greatest expansions was there in the 2012 to 2014. While we expanded in the 80s and 90s with 2 characters, but then we had over 1,000 generics that .anythings and .everythings that had the mix into that new gTLD program. But today there were over 1,500 TLDs out there in the domain name system. And until ICANN opens that new round, in the second round of TLDs in the internet naming system, it's a fixed number of TLDs that we have today. Looking at the outlook, we have about 350 million domain name registrations worldwide. 189.9 are what we call the legacy TLDs, any of those gTLDs that were identified before the large expansion in 2012. We have about just over 133 million CC TLDs, and a whopping 27 million of the new gTLDs from that gTLD program. If we look at the first 10 years of the internet, that was in internet users worldwide, that was about a 0.2% penetration rate. However, in this last round, with the new gTLDs that have come online for the last 9 years, that's about a 2% penetration. So I think domain names are here to stay, and the outlook looks great. But as we're looking at the future, I like to say domain names are not a fad. I don't know if any of you remember laser discs or 8-track tape cassettes. If you don't, it's because they came and then they went. They're not here anymore, but that is not the life or the expectation of domain names. Domain names are here for the long haul and will not get wiped out by the // or moving back into a walled garden of content. We will have .anything and .everything for anyone and everyone to be able to mark their unique place online, locally with gTLDs, regionally and nationally with ccTLDs, or globally with gTLDs, and a combination of those options. While we had the .com boom in the 1990s, and we believe the next boom is going to come to the left of the dot, enhancing growth for all domain names overall. And I believe the next round of new gTLDs is critical to that overall growth. So we definitely are looking forward to that. Because as the well-known saying goes, a rising tide raises all ships. So with only a 38-year history, domain names are still young and growing. And so the namespace is evolving, and we have to help our customers to adapt and also adapt our own business practices. Over 40% of the world has internet connections today versus 1% back in 1995. So the internet and domain names are not a fad that will go away soon. So thank you so much, Thomas, and everyone for letting me share. I really appreciate your time and look forward to any questions.
Right. Thanks a lot, Crystal. I'm not sure what time it is for you, but it must be quite late if you are in the US, right? So yeah, it's only 1 hour left in our panel. So, but thanks very much for the presentation. And it's interesting that you point out that domain names already existed when people used VHS tape, right? It's a long time ago. I mean, myself, okay, I even used a mini disc player. Okay, I know all these times. And now, currently, actually, we are in the sunrise period of .watches as well. .watches is launching right now, the domain name. And I'm not sure if people are still using watches, okay, but luckily Apple had the idea to make an Apple Watch, okay, and fitness monitors, you know, so even you can see the technology is actually still emerging around the same thing, which is touching things, feeling things, seeing things, and people are still staring at screens, so they need to enter something to go somewhere, right? So domain names still exist. And everybody has been saying, okay, there's a threat for the domain name industry because blockchain domains will appear and they will just take over the market, but it doesn't happen, no. Okay, even blockchain usage is not there. Now we have the threat of AI probably as well, which needs some quick regulation or not. Nobody's sure. And in the European Union, there's going to be the AI Act. It might have some impact on the domain name industry as well. So, but probably I don't want to go too far on this. But the interesting thing is actually that most of the new top-level domain names which were applied for 11 years ago have not launched yet. Like .music is still coming this summer, and there are many TLDs which still need to look for an operator actually. Same for the brand TLDs. So
Yes.
yeah, and we have another interesting operator here for TLD, which is DotAsia with Edmon Chung, and he's going to give an outlook to us about the domain name industry and experience sharing about .kids. And he's also a veteran who came over to Taipei from Hong Kong, short flight. Yeah, nice to thank you, please.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for having me. Always excited, you know, like Crystal, always excited to talk about domain names, and of course, always excited to talk about my favorite topic, which is internationalized domain names or Chinese domain names here in Taipei. Then, so Valerie talked a little bit about the what's happening at ICANN to bring in new gTLDs, new top-level domains, new extensions to domains, and then Crystal gave us a bit of a memory lane going back to the early days of domain names. So what I wanted to share from DotAsia is really a little bit of our experience, especially looking at the current development of the domain name market from DotAsia, from .kids, and of course, 点网站, which is an internationalized domain name, which is a Chinese top-level domain as well. So, how's the market looking? Well, for new gTLDs, this is really this comes from one of the websites that track how the growth or the development of domain names registered is looking like, and this is for all the new generic top-level domains, not including .com and some of the legacy names. And you can see it really interesting. One of the first things I think I want to bring out, not to say that there is not potential, and I still look at it, and I'll conclude it that way as well. I still think there's lots of value and growth that will come from the domain name market, but as you can see, this is how the market looks like. It's not really like a completely hockey stick. You know, it's not the period where Crystal mentioned between 2000, between 1998 and maybe 2010. That's but what we see is a slow growth. There's a uptake when the new gTLDs came in right around 2015, 2016. There's a growth that takes up. But then it goes slowly. It grows slowly. But what is also important is that it's steady. It's a very strong and steady development. You see a little bit of a hump there. That was in 2019, 2020. That was when the pandemic hit, and there was a little bit of an interest in everyone working from home. That there is internet is going to be much more important. People pick up names, COVID. Whatever names, there's a little bit of hump, and then it comes back down a little bit because maybe those names weren't as useful. Ups and downs, they'll come, but overall you can see the trend slightly growing, and that's the kind of market that I think we will see. The other thing that is interesting is the amount of domain names within one top-level domain. So we talk about .com, and there's hundreds of millions of domain names registered on the .com, but that is, I think, is not likely to be the case into the future. We're not talking about that kind of marketplace. Well, you can look at, sorry, let me jump over this and come back. But you can look at it and see that domain, like the top new gTLDs, actually here, you can see that up to 40 and 41 ranking, that's what only about 40 of the 1,200 new gTLDs introduced have more than 100,000 domain names under management. So what and then if you go further down, up to about 240, the top 240 has more than 10,000. So we're actually talking about 1,000 of the top-level domains that have less than 10,000 domains. So a few thousand domain names registered under each TLD. So one of the things that I think is important to note is that one particular TLD to have tons of domains still happen, but it's more likely that we will have a lot of TLDs and a few thousand, 10,000, 30,000 domain names under management. And that's one thing that I think is really interesting. The other thing, going back to what I want to show, a little bit like Crystal going down memory lane, back in 2008, this is how you usually register domain names. There is a drop-down box, with the top-level domain like .com, .net, .asia, and so on. But that's long gone as well. Why? Because there's so many top-level domains. It's impossible to put all the I mean, it's not impossible, but it won't be very user-friendly to put 1,000 top-level domains in the drop-down box, right? So really what you're seeing is that, it's a general search. So I just did a quick search, DNS 2023 Asia, and you can see, interestingly, what happens is that, you have the .com name, and then you have .Asia, the pricing, and so on. And it tries to match, right? So I put in a search, and it tries to give you what's what's the most relevant. Apparently .ai or .store or .vip seems to be more relevant, at least for GoDaddy. But that's also another interesting issue. Maybe it's not just about the relevance. Well, we're talking about shelf space, right? So one of the dynamics of the marketplace is also that registrars now need to deal with how to work with shelf space. Of course, those top-level domains that are listed higher in the list would likely get more registrations, right? So registrars do take note of that and think about how to do that. And registries are responding to that. And also, this is not just about selling shelf space. It's also about providing the most relevant domain for registrations by users. Gone are the days that people would have a drop-down box and maybe even have the check boxes where you choose the top-level domain. Actually, it's very search-driven nowadays with registrars and in terms of registration of domain names. So this is, I think, another interesting observation that we would like to share. So we have been, for some of our work, we have been tracking some of the development of the marketplace in terms of pricing as well. One of the interesting things to note is that domain name prices seem to be dropping, yes, but if you look closer into it, what we have done is some study like from the year before to 2022. Actually, yes, what you see is a promotional prices are coming down. So the first year registration goes down to $1 a registration. .Asia, of course, we also try to do that. So in the average new registration price has actually dropped by almost 20% between the 2 years. And the median new registration prices also dropped as well. But what is interesting is that the lowest base prices and the lowest renewal prices actually came up. So, on one side, the promo pricing is going very, very low, but the lowest renewal, the lowest base registration price actually came up by a little bit. So that also speaks to inflation and those kind of things where the operation of top-level domains will need to, the very, very base price is coming up a little bit as well. So this is, I think, interesting observation we see. And in terms of .Asia, we're seeing as a very, stable. If you look at this is a 3-year new create. So overall, it's very stable. It has its ups and downs. Obviously, it's based on promotional pricing, promotional with registrars, and so on. But we're quite excited that at least based on the Global Domain Report, .Asia is still the most successful around gTLDs. We currently have about 250,000 registrations under management. But as I said, this has been developing at a very slow growth period, and there are ups and downs as well. So we have been hovering around 250,000 registrations, well, between 220,000 to 250,000 domains under management for the last 15 years. And this is similar, one of the things that I guess Thomas mentioned as well is recently we also launched .kids, and this is a very different top-level domain than .Asia. It's intended to be a much more protected space, But what I wanted to highlight is that, you see that it was launched late last year, and it's, again, slowly growing, a few thousand domain names under management. And that's sort of what we see if you look at the other top-level domains as well. Of course, there are ones that are more open that would have a little bit more, than ones who are more close that would have a little bit less. But the growth is there, but the growth is not a hockey stick. Likewise, actually, with Dianwangzhan, which is .web in Chinese. Here I want to show a really interesting thing. In general, you can see that it's, again, growing slowly, but you can see a jump and then a drop off, like a cliff. What that drop off in 2018, 2009, between 2018 and 2019, actually you want to highlight is that there was a policy enforcement in China. So what happened was that in China, they started to require registries and registrars to be licensed specifically under the Chinese government. Well, obviously we didn't get the license back then, so we weren't able to sell, and some registrants were not able to renew their name, and therefore, there's a little bit of a cliff that fell off. So what I did want to highlight is that policies do affect domain names, and do affect the marketplace, and this is one of the very clear kind of hump and drop off that you can see. After that, we got the license in around 2019, and you can see the growth, the slow growth come back into play. Again, there are ups and downs, but there is a general slow growth for a lot of new gTLDs, and that's what we are observing, at least from the top level domains that we're running. So now looking into the future. Of course, as I mentioned earlier on, one of my favorite topic is internationalized domain names, and Dianwangzhan is one of them. As you can see here, especially in Taipei, I want to highlight that this is in simplified Chinese. Right, and the part of the limitations for growth would be in Hong Kong and in Taipei and Taiwan, we use traditional Chinese. Well, why is this not possible? That's because of policy. When new gTLDs, when internationalized domain names were introduced in 2012 through that round of new gTLDs, what is called IDN variants, which for Chinese, the most simple way to think about it is simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese. They were not mapped together. They were not, registries were not allowed to operate both the simplified Chinese version and the traditional Chinese version, and that limits the ability for Dianwangzhan to promote itself here in Taipei and in Taiwan. Well, that is changing, and that's the community has been working very hard in the last 10 years actually to develop policies to address these type of issues. And what we found out is that it's not just about Chinese. Chinese has this issue of simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese, but actually many other languages, Arabic, languages used in India, Indic scripts, they also have this variant issue. Well, and that's one of the exciting things that Valerie mentioned is that, well, this time round, we believe that internationalized domain names is ready. And this is going to be a big part of the new generic top-level domains and the development of domain names, I believe. Because local businesses, if you walk in the street in Taipei, most of the small businesses, the restaurants, all of them would be using local languages and local language names. And that's just natural because a local business is catering to the audience here and they want to be known that way, and their identity offline is much easier to understand and remember. And for domain names, it's very important to be able to translate the identity offline to online. And that's why I think, that's, to me at least, that's a big part of the development. However, you think, in the last 10 years, 15 years, registries have actually been providing internationalized domain names registrations. Chinese domain names under .tw, under Taiwan has been developing, but, well, nobody is using it. As I said, the policies and the technology actually has been developing over the last 10 years, and I think we have come to a point where this is becoming more real. Well, and the other thing that is interesting to see is that recently we have done a little bit of research. Of course, users, maybe they don't use Chinese domain names, or even in Japan, they don't use Japanese domain names, but when you search, think about it, when you search in Google or when you search anywhere, local users always use their own language to search. Honestly, if you search for a restaurant here in Taipei, let's say you search for Ding Tai Fung, you would put in the Chinese name of the restaurant, right, for search. So that's going to be really interesting, and we are seeing that. In fact, under the .Asia zone, we see a bunch of registrations from Japan utilizing Japanese keywords that people use to search. And so one of the interesting things that I think will develop, especially for internationalized domain names, is their potential to develop search engine optimization, is to anticipate people searching, and the names that are valuable will probably be things that people will search for, both in terms of brand names as well as the type of keywords. So, and one of the things that I think Valerie touched on a little bit as well is also that in the past, ICANN really hasn't really leaned in a lot in terms of internationalized domain names and the acceptance of it. But that has changed also. Earlier this year in March, we have the community and the industry work together on one of what is the Global Universal Acceptance Day. IDNs, internationalized domain names, Chinese domain names, still have challenges. There are still platforms, still databases, still websites that do not take Chinese domain names, and that makes it very difficult for small and medium-sized businesses to actually use their domains. Hosting providers, ISPs that are not fully ready for internationalized domain names. But we believe that if we work together, that can be solved. The issue is not easy, as in, because you think about domain names and email addresses, actually, to just change your database to be able to have Chinese domain names, that part is not difficult. But that same name, the same email address is being used across the board for a lot of things. Your username, your login, when you forget your password, you get back through your email and customer support. Every single part of the system requires an update, and that's why universal acceptance has taken a little while. But I can note that ICANN and the ICANN community has been working very hard in the last few years to really push forward on this. And in the last Universal Acceptance Day, the UA Day this March, or actually not last, the first UA Day, we have a lot of participation from around the world. More than 50 events were held across the different countries and jurisdictions, and many international organizations are also participating and really increasing the awareness of universal acceptance. So I think that's one of the things that we see. The other thing that we see is the branding of TLDs. If you saw earlier, I showed some of the brands from .kids and Dianwangzhan. One of the things that at DotAsia we're doing as well is looking a lot more about branding the top-level domain. It used to be that it's just very generic, and Thomas mentioned that last week, actually, I was in Singapore as well at the International Trademark Association. they certainly have, that community certainly have a lot to learn on domain names, but I think this community actually has a lot to learn in terms of branding, because that's what is needed, I think, in the new gTLDs as well, is how to set the branding. And in DotAsia, we have been learning that as well. A few years ago, we have been working on, how to position the DotAsia brand versus all the other new generic top-level domains coming in, and the emotional kind of brand value, the emotional brand that people that kind of elicit from people as they look into registering domain names. So. I think another observation is that both the domain name itself is going to be more than just a name. It's not just a navigation tool on the internet, it's part of the brand. But for the top-level domain, also, it's becoming an important part to have a kind of branding. Why would someone choose this top-level domain over the other, and when? And you have to understand that top-level domains, you cannot have everyone register your name, but you want to make sure that when they actually, when it fits the particular project, the particular thing that they are trying to do, that's where the brand value comes in. Another thing that's important for new generic top-level domains, I think, is to note that it's more than just one name. Like a chain store in the physical world, you have many 7-Elevens, right? You have many McDonald's. What that does is that people, can find you and more easily get to your physical store around. And with domain names, it's actually would work the same. You have multiple domain names under different top-level domains for different projects, and so that people can more easier find you, like search engine optimization, and also easier remember the top-level domain and the kind of domain that you use. So more than just one domain per company is another development that I think is important, and we're seeing that as well. So at DotAsia, this is the kind of thing that we're doing as well, looking at the kind of brand that we want to project. DotAsia ourselves, as you can see here, every DotAsia domain actually supports internet development in Asia. So beyond just chasing new registrations, every DotAsia domain actually supports internet development. We run as a nonprofit organization, and this is the kind of branding that we want to project as well. For .kids, again, obviously it's for kids. And one of the things that the last part that I want to cover is that like .kids, it's a protected area. One of the development also is about trust and cybersecurity. This is in 2011, and this is one of the first DNS abuse forums that was run at ICANN. Back then, most of the registries were in registrars saying, we're not going to touch this. DNS abuse, what DNS abuse? The hosting providers, oh, you got to go to the ISP. And the registries and registrars not going to do anything about it. That has completely changed, right? Today, registries and registrars are very keen about addressing DNS abuse. And this is a very important trend. And yesterday as well, I've mentioned that DotAsia and TWNIC is working closely together. And I think one of the very important things about new generic top-level domains is the ability to build trust. That people trust the domain name system and trust the top-level domain. And that goes back into the part of the brand. As mentioned, we have been working very closely with TWNIC on addressing DNS abuse. But back in 2011, I actually sat on the DNS abuse forum, but my colleagues were like laughing me out of the room. Why are you even talking about that? It's not our job. This has changed, and I think this is going to be here to stay. Registries and registrars have a part to play in developing the trust in the DNS system. So as a summary slide, I think there's going to be more gTLDs, but less registration per top-level domain zone. I think there's going to be a higher base price, but a lower promotional price. I think that's going to be the trend. Brand value of top-level domains, including building trust, is going to be important. I think companies are going to start to understand that they will be using a more than one domain per company. And finally, I do believe that we will see a breakthrough in internationalized domain names, because it should be, and it's important that people can reflect their native languages in navigating the internet. And the last one is, I still think that operating a gTLD, a generic top-level domain, is a viable business, viable proposition, because you don't think of it as a hockey stick business, but you are actually developing and you're actually running a valuable part of the global internet infrastructure. Thank you.
Oh, very wonderful presentation, and you touched really a lot of topics which show actually, yeah, you're right, the universal acceptance is coming. I mean, I remember when I first arrived in Taiwan 18 years ago, it was not possible even to use Chinese all the time correctly on a computer, right? You had to install a lot of proprietary software, and no browser actually supported anything which was IDNs or international domain names. Email, actually even nowadays, email, nobody uses IDNs for sending emails, right? Because most of the email clients will not support it, or they will have some display issues. Some email clients on phones may crash if you send them an email with an IDN. There have been many security issues also related to IDNs. Most people actually don't know that even .tw has also .taiwan in simplified and traditional Chinese. So you can actually go on Gandhi's website, for example, you can search for something in Chinese, .taiwan in Chinese, and it will actually propose you to buy a domain name. And so the universal acceptance now is there because we have Unicode. We have also very successful communities, as you said, with especially the city top-level domain names like .nyc, .berlin, and in Europe as well, .paris is very popular, and it's really focused on the Paris city. If you type Louvre.Paris, you go directly to the Louvre Museum, and I think we will see more of those. It could even happen that someone applies for .taipei in IDN, and it's maybe the new Taipei city government who runs the top-level domain name. So yeah, I think there's still a lot of space to develop, and the development has been slow, but we can see, okay, it's going up, it's going in the right direction. And so I'm happy also to have David Liu here today. David Liu is the founder of NetChinese, one of the oldest ICANN registrars actually, and also very, very successful company in Taiwan and in the Asia region. So yeah, David, to you.
May I?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Consider our major audience come from Taiwan, so please allow me use Chinese to deliver my presentation. Okay? Thank you. Okay,
thank you very much. So for my part, what I would like to share with you, again, as mentioned by Edmon and Crystal, they talk about this issue from regional and global perspective. However, for my part, I would like to focus on the domain name market here in Taiwan. So we know that the first round of gTLD was beginning in 2012. So that was 11 years ago. So over the past 11 years, how the market has developed. So basically, in our company, we have what we call domain lab, and we did a research. And every quarter, we basically would conduct market research. So we did our research from December of 2021 to March of 2023. So we surveyed companies which was lawfully set up here in Taiwan. They probably set up their official website, or they probably set up the website to do e-commerce activities. So we actually compared 40,000 companies in the first phase. And for this year, we surveyed more than 50,000 companies. So in December of 2021, as you can see on the left-hand side, we know that .com.tw was a favorite among Taiwanese companies. So back in December of 2021, more than 50.03% was .com.tw. And .tw, IDN, .tw, those took up a smaller portion. And in addition to .com.tw, .com was about 35.71%. However, please direct your attention to the gray part. We surveyed enterprises here in Taiwan. We would like to see what type of gTLD they were using. As you can see, the gray part speaks to the gTLD registration. And so we surveyed a total of 45,000 companies, but less than 4% of them actually used gTLD. And then we did our research again in March of 2023. As you can see, as compared with 2 years ago, now .com.tw had a smaller percentage. It dropped below 50%. Now it's 49.68%. And at the same time, gTLD is increasing, and now it accounts for more than 1%. And .com also, as a top-level domain, has increased. In terms of its percentage, now it's 36.89%. So we believe that .tw is still the favorite among companies in Taiwan. So we must admit there are a lot of new startups in Taiwan, and they typically would choose .com as their domain name. So now they account for more than 35%, and the gTLD has also seen a lot of growth. Now it accounts for more than 4%. So between these two rounds of market survey, we realized that gTLD and new gTLD have shown very significant and highly visible growth. So looking ahead, we believe that gTLD and new gTLD will continue to become more and more popular among companies in Taiwan. As Edmon mentioned, IDN is still not very accepted in Taiwan, but I will come to that later in my presentation. So for this chart, as I mentioned, we can take a deep dive into the distribution of new gTLD. Actually, ccTLD originally there were 64, but now there are 67. In other words, we look at a very narrow range. There's not much expansion. However, we realize a lot of companies which were set up in Taiwan, but they actually were branch offices for foreign companies, for example, .co.jp. And we now see .co.jp.cc.io.me. Those are the top 5 ccTLD registrations here in Taiwan in March of 2023. Do you know .co refers to Colombia? But it's so surprising. .co has overtaken .jp to become the #1 ccTLD here in Taiwan. We know that we have a closer relationship with Japan, but how come companies in Taiwan, they prefer .co over .jp? Well, on the one hand, .co reminds people of company, because it looks very similar. And sometimes it's impossible to get your foot in .com, because probably all domain names that finished with .com have already been taken up. That's why a lot of people choose .co instead.
Let me share with you a summary of the changes in gTLD in our recent report. Now we see that it has exceeded the 1% threshold, but it comes in different category, expanding from 107 to 124. In the second second bullet point, you see that we have the total of 5 brand TLDs as well as 4 geographical TLDs. So the number of 9 doesn't change. What changes is in other areas of new gTLDs. The top 5 ranking, including .site, .tech, .shop, .live, and .design. These new gTLDs actually are rising its market share in Taiwan. Of course, we also found that .Taipei, which we operate, is actually increasing in share in the Taiwan market. So we believe that the acceptance of new gTLD is expected to rise among businesses in Taiwan. So the previous report I just cited was more about the acceptance or user preferences by businesses of gTLDs in Taiwan. But starting from this year, our Domain Lab has launched a new project in which we want to survey internet users in Taiwan about their preferences and acceptances of new gTLDs. And this is only an interim report. We schedule to finalize the report by August, and we will publish and release that report in our seminar in September this year. So the domain name here actually are accessible via netbook or smartphones by internet users in Taiwan. So we're actually looking the internet address of that website. We extract that address for further analysis. So we finished the survey by mid-May, and we traced more than 500,000 websites. So we found some interesting observations. To begin with, for all the internet users in Taiwan, the percentage of encounter with .com website only took up 34%. But if we include other IDN and other sub-level domains, the total percentage is about 41.44% under TWNIC management. So that's the share accessed by most Taiwanese users in Taiwan, but it does not exceed the 50% mark. What's surprising to us from this report is that the total, actually, new gTLD's share is less than 40%, but there's a surprising share. It's about 14.48% of share by ccTLD and 4% for new gTLD. Edmon, don't be nervous. Of course, we'll definitely reach your part in the future. So of a particular note here is in this summary. So overall, the domain names under TWNIC and gTLD and ccTLD comes in the breakdown of 4.4.2. This is very different from the situation among businesses. And what's more important is that there are 347 types of ccTLDs, but during our survey this time, the types of ccTLD is not being analyzed from geographies. For example, in Taiwan, we have .com, .tw, and also IDN. We list them in one go, so there are more than 180 because there are about 180 members under ICANN. But in new gTLD, to our surprise, there are more than 500 because, as Crystal mentioned, there's about 1,500 of them. There's about 800 plus gTLD among them. Surprisingly, internet users in Taiwan can access a lot of new gTLDs. So for announced TLD, a majority of them can be accessed by internet users in Taiwan. So here's a brief summary for you. We expect that going forward, we see a lot of new companies are using new gTLD as their first registration. For example, .design, which has seen an increase in their share in recent years. So for gTLD, we expect it will continue to rise. Meanwhile, we also think that the acceptance of new gTLDs by internet users will be more pronounced, will actually extend to businesses. So we look forward to the further opening by the next round of gTLD discussions. And Thomas also mentioned about the issue of IDN. So allow me to share with you our observations with regard to IDNs. Well, Edmon, we believe that UA is very important. Another reason is that, well, we agree that IDN plays an important role in promoting regional use of domain names. It is an important tool in our toolkit. If you want to be a popular brand, you need to leverage the power IDN. Why? Well, let's take a look at this table. Among the 500,000 plus of data entries, this is the extracted results from our survey. From the leftmost column, you see that we see a lot of simplified Chinese being translated into Unicodes. That is when internet users open the browser and search that website, the website will actually show so-and-so and so-and-so. You will see a complete simplified Chinese web address. But actually the one coded in yellow, for example, XN-KPRY57D, what does that refer to? It refers to Taiwan. Based on our survey of 500,000 plus of company addresses. So this IDN, new gTLD, when it's being searched by users, it hasn't been translated into Unicode yet. It's still retained in its Unicode form. If you go down the table, you see that the final 8, for example, .china, .company, .trademark, .shop, .shopping in traditional Chinese, these gTLD, when being searched by users, are still shown in Unicode. So for internet user, if you see this is random strings of characters, you think that it's probably a scam website. You probably would not access this website. So we really are glad to see the increasing attention paid by ICANN to IDN because we really focus on UA. There are 2 websites, interestingly, which uses both .shopping mall and .company. Some companies will show .enterprise. Some companies will show this Unicode form. So apparently, we actually are happy to see the promotional efforts by ICANN because only when you build this comprehensive ecosystem will IDN play to its true potential. But currently, one of the challenges in the IDN space that we haven't have a comprehensive or robust ecosystem. Even if you have the IDNs in place, but users will also still see Unicode, but not IDN. That's one of the major bottlenecks in this space. We believe that IDN will definitely take off in the future because the revolutions brought about by ChatGPT and other AI applications. We believe that real-time translation across languages and characters will be a huge boon to IDN. As example, we know there's a company, producing lithium battery in Taiwan. They actually enjoy world-leading lithium battery technology in Taiwan. It's called Prologium technology. So what kind of IDMs the company can use in the future? Currently, very clear, it has to use English letters because, for example, Thomas in France wants to log onto a website using French characters or letters. It's very hard for him to reach Prologium technology websites in traditional Chinese. So the company Prologium now has to use IDN in English. But let's say the major search engines are incorporating AI capabilities into their architecture. Let's say if Bing or Google really are empowered with AI, when Thomas in France go to the search engine using French to search the keyword lithium batteries, Google can translate that string of words into traditional Chinese and link the user in Taiwan. So that's the inflection point after which IDN will become increasingly powerful because no matter where you are, users can use their native language to access the products and services promoted by company. I think by then, IDN will actually pass that inflection point to reach breakthrough growth. And we are all talking about the next round of new gTLD, so our company also has to pay sufficient attention to this area. Thomas mentioned the opening that back in 2012, we have 4 new gTLD applications, Acer, HTC, .Taipei, and among others. Acer, actually, there was an Australian company won the bid, but remaining 3 Actually, they treated our company as a consulting firm. We help HTC, Taipei Municipal Company, to apply for .gov. So we are one of the few companies in Taiwan who have finished reading the entire documents for the first round. It was this thick. So based on our experience in the first round, we found that we weren't really clear about what gTLD meant. So it was a very bothersome process for us to handle the application. But in 2020, we heard the news that the second round was about to be opened. So our company started to be approached by clients who were really interested in applying for the second round of GTLD. Thomas actually gave me a note, asking me to share about our client situation. So what I can share is that we were approached by about 10 clients. 2 or 3 of them are governments. They want to apply for geographical names. About 7 to 8 of them are brand-oriented TLDs. We haven't been approached by a new gTLD for our Unicode characters. But as you know, for all clients that approach us in the past 3 years, we've been asked the same questions that we could not avoid, actually 2. So you know what the questions will be. First, when will be the next round of new gTLDs kick off? Maybe 2023 to 2024 based on our earliest understanding, but now, sorry, the time frame is about 24 months, or maybe by the conservative estimates, you need to have to go to 2025 or early 2026. So our clients are actually on edge because that's the time frame being set. If without the specific time frame, it will be very challenging for our clients. The second questions are about the application. The first one was about $155,000 plus consultancy firm fees. So you need to prepare about $8 million for the first round in total. But what's the price tag going to be in the second round? It's still open to question. And also, we wrote a proposal for the first round. Therefore, we will propose some brand fact-check considerations or recommendations to ICANN. Because when we wrote the proposal for .htc, .gov, I think the most challenging one was the one for .htc, because the company just want to protect the brand by selling smartphone. So we were being asked the question, why are you going to apply for the TLD? We cannot just answer with one sentence, oh, we just want to protect our brand. So we need to have to write an essay out of the sentence. So when we were writing the essay for HTC, we thought it was very painful and boring because it's just a brand, a well-known brand. They just wanted to apply for that TLD to safeguard the rights of their brand and protect their brand. So in the second round, our recommendation is that for brand application, we can set up a brand fast track. For example, it's already a well-known established brand. You can skip the question. Just check the box saying that I'm going to apply for a brand TLD. Secondly, a lot of back-end suppliers are supporting about 800 plus brand TLDs. So maybe for GoDaddy, represented by Crystal, you have already acquired Newstar, which has supported a lot of back-end brand TLD brand. So let's say if the applicant has already worked with or has an agreement or MOU with GoDaddy, for that particular case, ICANN can simplify or maybe skip some of the technical review or simplify review mechanism. The reason is that actually brand TLD clients are really concerned first about the application fee. We know that ICANN really focus on standard settings, so it asked applicants to make a full description of their application. So applicants maybe will enjoy shorter time for review if they do not have to elaborate on everything. So thereby reducing the brand application fee and attracting more brand applicants into the gTLD space.
Well, so these are our recommendations to ICANN. Basically, we know the proper channel through which we can formally raise a recommendation to ICANN. But we know that ICANN is a very open system, so we hope that I can also raise those points here at this meeting. So that basically concludes my presentation. Based on our market survey of the market in Taiwan, we will have our seminar held in September. Welcome all of you to participate in the seminar. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David, for sharing your experience with the .brands especially and how it's going to develop in the future. I think nobody 11 years ago wanted to be the first mover. Everybody was afraid, okay, is it going to work, CDTLDs whatsoever, or brand TLDs. So very few brands applied. Others never put it into action because they were afraid of the consequences afterwards once they operated TLD. Because it's a full-time job, you need a dedicated team at the company to run a TLD. It's not a small business. But as you mentioned, there's now registries who are fully operational. Even I think the French top-level domain name.fr, they're also working to work as ICANN backend registrar to support the local community in France because it's an issue of trust, right? And for the Taiwan Trademark Association, for example, which I co-initiated 3 years ago, we have now over 200 members. We decided we have the domain name trademark.org.tw, but we also decided to use tta.taipei as the main domain name. Yeah. And the main reason I did that is actually because I wanted these trademark people to be aware that new top-level domain name exists. And so they are aware of it and they use it, right? They also use it for their own law firms. They use it for, and you know, one friend tells another, so they're aware about this. And I think now everybody gets to that actually these new TLDs are naturally. I hope it will happen the same way with the IDN TLDs, like, you know, .gongse is not really that much used, which is .company in Chinese. It's actually operated by TWNIC, I believe, right? So company is by TWNIC in China, the IDN, which is kind of funny. Yeah. And there might be a .company in katakana someday, run by a Japanese registry like GMO, or so it will be very interesting to see what comes as the next round. Personally, I believe actually, as you say, there should also be a fast track for brands. It's actually surprising that there's not a portal at ICANN where you can just apply for a TLD, right? And you give your bank account number and then you go ahead with it. There shouldn't actually be rounds. It should always be possible to propose something on the internet, right? So if I want to set up a website, I just do it with a few clicks. But if I want to apply for a TLD, I need to go through a process of 5 to 6 years and hire staff to do it and build technical capabilities as well. So yeah, I hope that the next round goes well and that we have it fast. Yeah, I totally agree to that. So should we go to any questions from the audience then? Because we have covered a lot, so there should be some questions now. Okay, no questions at all? Oh, one? Okay, one question.
Hi, Alban Kwan from CSC. So I just want to say, because we talk about new gTLDs and we certainly want the next round to open up. I'm sorry I come late, but perhaps you already discussed this. How would ICANN or local registrar will work together to actually help with the actual usage of the new gTLD, especially dot brands, because that's one of the biggest problems that I see at the moment. We have application, we have a lot of dot brand actually drop out because they don't see the peers using it at the moment. So I wonder whether you have any innovative idea how we can actually do that.
Okay, I'm just a moderator, but maybe I answer a little bit what is my experience with this. As I said, you have to push the brands to actually use it and make them understand that this is part of their own piece of the internet. So this goes way beyond the regulatory side or whatsoever. But you need just to tell them, okay, you can do something. You can, even the CEO of companies, unfortunately, even the marketing team, you need to educate them actually that they can put a domain name without a .com behind it, because they will always think .com is always in the end of a domain name. It must be there. So I think it's mostly of an educational issue. But I don't know what the panel thinks here. Any other thoughts on this?
Sorry. I reply in Chinese, okay.
Okay, so actually there are two gTLD, and two of them actually were withdrawn. And so there are two companies in Taiwan which filed their application using their brand. originally we were not a consultant to Acer. We know that they actually came up with a new budget, and they realized actually it is very expensive to maintain their new gTLD. That's why they withdrew their application before the application was approved. However, it's a different story because we were with HTC throughout the entire process. Back then, they encountered a lot of problems with their mobile phone business, and so they had to adjust their strategy for developing their mobile phone business. So eventually they had to withdraw their application. But I'm more optimistic when it comes to the second round, because in the first round, people had a very vague idea about how much it cost to maintain those domain names. But in the second round, we did 6 market surveys, and now people are more aware about the value of new gTLD, and once they have a better sense of how much it costs to maintain new gTLD domain names, I think this will encourage more companies to file applications in this week.
I'll respond a little bit as well. Actually, I think with the question you asked, in fact, I think the most important part is for the brand TLDs themselves to start using the domain in marketing areas, like when you see billboard ads, they're still using their .com name. Why wouldn't they, use their brand TLD as the major advertising campaign? I think that's going to make a difference. One of the really interesting usage that I have seen with brand TLDs is actually .hsbc. Everyone in, most people in Hong Kong would have this app that is Pay Me. It's kind of like Line Pay. It's like kind of like a pay. And I can get a URL that goes actually, if you want to pay me, you can do this. payme.hsbc/Edmon. And you can pay me. So every user gets to choose their own URL under payme.hsbc. However, when HSBC goes to put an ad out there, even for PayMe, they never use the payme.hsbc. They put a QR code there. So I think one of the things is the most effective one would be for those brand TLDs who are using it to actually promote it. That, I think, will make a big difference in terms of the usage.
Yeah, and if I may add that for brands, I think it's also important to tell them about the security aspects, right? If they have their own TLD, they can use it for internal services, they can run it for their own applications, and they don't need to rely on VeriSign or GoDaddy Registry or Donuts or whatever, So they can, of course, it's a backend registry, but they don't need to rely on those operators. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of DNS operators in the world. Gandhi is among the top 10, for example, and the domain DNS is for free, basically. Okay, but if you run your own infrastructure, then you can easily, be more reliant on yourself as well. And but what happened in the first one is nobody wanted to be a first mover, so nobody knows how to use it. But so I'm very happy to see that HSBC is there and that actually people are using it. I think news.apple was another one. So it's good that brands start to use it. I think we will see more usage, but we need to educate them. Just like you said, we need to educate them. We need to make sure that they can actually just have the name there without the .com in the end. And okay, Crystal, you have any comment on this?
Yes, I do. Very similar to what colleagues have said. I think Edmon said it very well. Wanting to really kind of look at use. There are some guides and some help out there. One of the websites out there that helps to showcase a lot of use that can be a tool for CSC or others to use. There's makeway.world, which is a website that shows some stats from a lot of the brands that are starting to put out some use out there. to really be able to highlight others that are doing it and how they've done it. What are some of the benefits from doing that? From another registrar perspective, you have Google. Google Domains is on domains.google, so they're using their .brand for their domain name business. It's a use, but Google is out there. So I think being able to highlight a lot of those uses to customers is really kind of the key for helping them kind of get from the IP lawyers over into the marketing departments to really be able to settle in use, and how to use your .brand in parallel to your current domain name portfolio, with the thought that you do want to lead to that will be my main property, but not necessarily do you just make the full shift immediately, because there is a lot of SEO, there is a lot of things to think about in doing that, but just helping people take that first step, I think, is one of the hardest things. And there are a lot of examples out there of people that are doing that. And I think it's just getting that in front of your clients.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Crystal. Yeah, I think there's a lot of actually new top-level domain names as well, which can help to show brands the usage as well. For example, .link is extremely popular. To have just a short link to whatever services you have. And we have another question from Kenny, I think. Or
I think after.
Okay, I'm Chen from Suzhou University, Taiwan. And I'd like to ask a question about the IDN. And because when Edmon talks about it, I try to use the IDN, the traditional Chinese one, in my own browser. And when I type the IDN, the domain name in my own browser, after I go to the destination website, but the domain name in my address bar is just stay in Unicode. And I think it is not very friendly for the IDN user, especially when the user is not very familiar with English language. So I would like to ask about if the Universal Acceptance Steering Group is trying to work on communicate with the browser developers or some project on that.
Yes, I think Edmon can answer that well, right?
Yes, so the short answer is yes, but how the UASG, the Universal Acceptance Steering Group, looks at it is 5 areas to be Universal Acceptance fully ready. First one is accept, second one is validate, third one is process, fourth is storage, and what you talk about is the fifth one, which is display. And yes, we have those challenges, not only in the browser. When you go to, say, for example, hosting or even some of the domain registration processes, you end up exposing the what is called the Unicode, the XN-, something. So there are actually 2 worldviews, interestingly enough, because a lot of the software is actually developed by English-speaking people, and they find XN-, easier for them to bug fix. And therefore, the first implementation often exposes the XN-. But the ultimate goal, as you said, is to display it in the native language. Of course, there should be tools that can, I guess, convert between the two. But for the user, I think you're right. It's very important that the native language be shown.
I can add to that, actually. It's very difficult even to enter a Chinese domain name, right? You have to switch the alphabet. I mean, you have to switch the key because the dot is not the same as in Chinese and in Unicode, right? I mean, in ASCII. Yeah. That answers your question, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Kenny, maybe last question from you.
Okay, thank you. I will try to utilize the time for me. Okay, Kenny Huang, put my head into different position as a co-chair of Chinese Label Generation Panel and also chair of CCPDP4 Working Group. We just complete the Chinese label generation panel, the task, and we give in the whole set of errand to the ICANN. But eventually, I just realized we couldn't shut down the working group because ICANN just gave us a very tremendous assignment, and he asked the committee member need to study on the single Chinese character requirement for new gTLD. But according to our initial assessment among the community, there seems no such strong demand from the single Chinese character new gTLD requirement. And besides, most of the panelists, actually, they are quite exhausted by the past few years working on ICANN, so they are reluctant to carry that kind of burden further. So I just try to clarify, is there any strong demand either from registrar point of view or from ICANN point of view, whether there will be a strong demand for looking for single character registration for new gTLD, or that's just a perceptional requirement? If a perceptional requirement, then I probably happily to say no to ICANN or to new gTLD community as well. Thank you.
Okay, I will go first on this as a moderator. I take my time, right? Yeah, I would rather apply for INI than just I. That's what I want to say. Which means I rather apply for love you as a domain name than just love. Yeah.
Okay, allow me to respond this question in Mandarin. Personally, I feel that single Chinese character top domain names are critical because, well, why does IDNs cannot make it into Chinese characters? It's because we don't have a single Chinese character system. Because in English alphabet, you can use a word as a top-level domain. For example, Asia or kid, these are nouns or terms. In Chinese, you need phrases that made up of more than one Chinese character. For example, you cannot have .web site, no? Of course, you can only have one single Chinese character rather than two. So for users, that's more user-friendly so that we can enable UA. So the prerequisite for the popularity of this kind of domain name is to have single Chinese character. It's not a universal requirement, but without the ability to support one Chinese single character, we cannot realize universal CCLD because we cannot equate all languages at the same time. So single Chinese characters, I think, is very important in the domain name space.
Regarding to what I have, and basically what we have is we have Chinese language expertise and also computer science expertise to join as a group. But basically, when you try to come out with a recommendation for single Chinese character or for new gTLD, and we are not only suffering language requirement, but also we have the very strong challenge to deal with the security and stability advisory community because they proposed the SSAC 52 recommendation. One of the recommendation is single character should be prohibited because of cybersecurity consideration. And we need to convince the cybersecurity expert, global expert, real expert, and actually no cybersecurity concern from Chinese community. It's very hard for us. Thank you.
Can I quickly respond? So the SAC document is there. However, the SAC document was created before the LGR, the label generation rule sets, and before a lot of the policies being developed. SSAC today, I cannot speak for SSAC, obviously. I'm not even on SSAC. But if that is an issue, we can ask SSAC again. But the issues that were pointed out by the SSAC document, we have, what has been done has overtaken that. So in my view, that was put in place in the previous round to say, okay, in 2012, these are the issues, and it hasn't been resolved, and therefore those are the security concerns. But those security concerns has actually been addressed at this point. And one of the key things is the boundary of the character. One of the key issue that the the SSAC report says is the boundary of characters. But that has been very clearly defined now with the LGR. So the boundary of character issue is no longer there. So the single character TLD shouldn't be an issue. And one of the issues that the SSAC document also points to is a single typing of TLD. And therefore, for English alphanumerical top-level domains, it's still not suggested to have single English character domain. However, for a single Chinese character domain, usually it won't be just one stroke of the keyboard, and therefore that security concern is also addressed in terms of ESAC's concern. So I encourage, the group to think about that, and in fact, yes, the ESAC document is there, but a lot of the concerns has actually already been addressed.
I actually think that there's the technical specification RFCs of the internet prohibit that you just have one character domain, but I'm not sure about this. There's a list of how many characters, AZ, 2, it's just, it has to be 2 characters. And okay, I think we're running out of time, so I just want to give a summary in closing. You should wait for September for David's report on the IDNs and the usage, which will be very interesting. If you want to have a preliminary report, maybe you can send him an email. If you want to see how brands are using their TLD and how they can use them, you should visit makeway.world from GoDaddy Registry. If you want to see how to run your community top-level domain name, you can talk to Edmon and see .kids and how they do with .asia since many, many years. Yeah, and besides that, we need ICANN to speed up, so because everybody wants their TLD now. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kuiper, for moderating this session, and thank you to all panelists for this very informative session. We would like to invite all panelists and the moderator to please have a group photo, so please take one step forward and we will have a group photo. All right, and a big smile, please look at the photographer. Thumbs up, the second photo.